All right, guys. I'm just going to check I'm on the right microphone here. Let me know if the sound's a bit odd because I'm not sure if it's picked up the other mic. Um, yeah, I'm going to go over some of the questions and we'll just see where it goes. Um, the first thing is there's been a few people asking about the rent and you know it's advertised as somebody mentioned the way it's advertised is try before you buy, which isn't actually correct because if you imagine you move to this area and you can get a rent that's only 300 a month. Why would you want to pay €1,000 a month commitment to a purchase or put a deposit down on something that you're not committed to buying? Well, you wouldn't. Um, so this is the thing. Ignore what they're saying on that because that's not what it is at all. Because you lose that. All these rent to buy things are not set for you just to come in and test the waters. Now, there's different ways of doing it, which is why it gets a bit confusing. And I'll go over the different ways just to sort of clarify it a bit. The first one is where you put a deposit down and you're paying you can put a deposit down. And another one is where you're paying a higher rent premium. And then another option, which is you'll get on things like possibly some of the newer properties, maybe not, is you pay normal rent and it has an option to buy later on. That's the way a lot of these things are set up in Spain due to the rights that tenants have, that you can have an option to purchase the property you're living in. But that's not rent to buy because the whole point is when you moved into it, A, it's very likely the owner didn't want to sell it in the first place. B, you never had any contractual obligation to make a purchase on the property. And that's what it wasn't based around. It was basically based around you just renting the property. So that's a completely different option to one where you're actually going, okay, I want that house. I want to move in. We'll take some deductions off the rent. I'll pay the rent for the first 3 years and then we'll deduct that as my deposit. That's a level of commitment. And that's what I say you need to look into it because as somebody mentioned, it's unregulated. I would say it's regulated, but not in the same way as like a mortgage purchase where it's structured specifically for mortgages. What you're more likely to have is this is structured around specific agreements. It's not got the same sort of level of protection, but if you know the problems people have had in Spain relating to properties anyway, I would say it's not a million miles off from that. In the reality that a lot of the properties here, people got problems around the ownership of the land. In the sense it was built on land that they weren't legally allowed to build on. Around issues about the specific location. It could be on a piece of land A you're not allowed to build on, but B, neighbors and stuff tapping off the water, the electrics, and other issues that obviously wasn't highlighted in this structured and legal environment that's supposed to protect you against these things. The other one is the habitational certificate. I'll just bring this up quite quickly because there's been a few people who have problems with the habitational certificate. It's supposed to be renewed every 10 years, as in when you need it. People have been caught out with the tax on it because when it's not actually set up properly, what you have is when the builders put the building together and it will be down as 1 square meter or something just to get it certified that it exists, because the building structure may change, the design may change, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, depending on the buyer. It could be, I assume these are done per plot originally, so you could actually have a 3-bedroom and a swimming pool, or you could have a 2-bedroom and a garage. So the point being is they want a bit of paperwork that says this is a house, this will pay tax, and they just put a little piece of that land for tax. Problem is that's supposed to be updated after the purchase. Now this sort of goes back to the point of regulations. Well, obviously that should be regulated because the lawyer should be picking that up. Plus the developer that sold the property should be picking that up. But often the case is they're not. So bear in mind, don't assume the standard of protection is a very high standard. A lot of time you have to research and double check things yourself, because I find myself, a lot of people will take the easy approach, or they'll just follow what somebody else has done, and not really be progressive in making sure it's actually correct, up to date, and regulations, etc., haven't changed. As somebody mentioned, I should put a disclaimer that I'm not offering legal advice. Well, the point is, I'm actually saying look at it yourself. It's not a case of I'm telling anybody to do anything. If you don't look at it and just say my lawyer's doing all that, it's not, that's what he's paid for. Fine. If he gets it wrong, fine. It's not my problem. I'm just saying a lot of people don't really look into it to the level they should do. Stern Wanderer, do you announce your live stream somewhere? I just saw it by chance. I should do, but I don't. The reason being is at the moment the school holidays are still on. So I do it when it's quiet. It's like today, April, and the kids are at the dentist. They've literally just finished. I've just had a message saying that they've just finished at the dentist. So this might only be about another 10 minutes, and then I'll be shooting off because I've got to go and take my internet back and my satellite TV box, because I'm getting rid of Movie Star today. Hopefully keeping the phones, but get rid of the other stuff. So I'll just make a quick message to see if they want picking up in a minute. Connor Van Grant, hey mate, do you by chance have an email for help looking at moving down south? English speaker looking for a job. Jobs are one of those things that I recommend getting a grip of Spanish, but also there's so many people that are English speakers here and not got other languages that you may find it quite hard in some areas. Also, a lot of the work will be seasonal, low paid. I would say be very, very wary about making a commitment with a family if you can't find a way to generate an extra income or have something set up. It's all right coming out as a single person because you'll find something, and if you don't, you can head back. But if you come over here and can't really set something up straight away, you're going to struggle. A lot of people do. My first point on that would be, if you've got computer skills, got stuff you can do online, like, for example, there's call centers around, but the call center pay isn't great in Spain. You'll find that a lot of them are doing the telemarketing for things like timeshares. There's a place up in Alicante that does that, and there's at least 6 call centers around that do it. But there's another place, there's a call center doing tech support, but you need to speak Dutch or French. Work is quite difficult if you're only speaking English. So just a bit of a warning on that. The content, Stone Wanderer, all right. So it's spontaneous. Yeah, just today I was looking at some of the comments. I thought I'd go over some of it before I go out today. Hi Maureen, how's it going? Yeah, I'm just doing it today because, quite simply, I just want to do this, and then I've got to go out and take all my satellite box and stuff back because my contract expired, and to be honest, I don't watch satellite TV here at all. So I'm sort of getting rid of that. But I'm just going to go through any questions that are in the feed. Videos. Where's my comments? 2 seconds. Just loading any comments that have been added over since the last live stream. Okay. Service fees on properties. I find around here that the average property seems around 200, 250 a year for the summa, which is like the equivalent of a council tax in the UK, or your tax on the property tax. For maintenance, If it's got a swimming pool and a lift, it can be a bit more because the swimming pool is cheaper than a lift. But generally, I find a lot of the service fees around 200 upwards. But it really depends on the size of the development, what it's got. For example, if it's got swimming pools, what's it got? You got swimming pools, you got your lifts, you got the green areas, car parking. Where it's open to more than just you using it, in the sense that it's going to have a communal charge. Street lighting inside the development. All these things have a service charge related to them, so they can vary. So if you are looking at buying a property, it's worth seeing what the prices are, how much it costs, and things. And there's always a notice board, or 99% of the time, there's a notice board of things around there. You can email the president or phone them or whatever to try and get the actual prices. You also find that in some areas there'll be a list of people that haven't paid their fees. There's a bit of a name and shame type thing. That gives you an idea of how the development's doing. Because one of the problems you get, if people ain't paying it, they ain't getting the service level, because quite simply people haven't paid into it in the first place when they should be. We're traveling next Saturday. Any objectives worth mentioning in Torrevieja? If you're going to Torrevieja on holiday, I mean, there's videos on pretty much all the key elements anyway. But you can go to Tabarca Island. You can get a boat from Torrevieja, visit Tabarca Island. Sometimes there's dolphins as well to see. There's submarine and some other bits around by the marina. Visiting the marina, going around the marina, going around the boardwalk around there, visiting the lakes. There's also the Salt Museum. There's a few bits scattered around, but I mean, a lot of it, there's videos of that anyway. If you look for the playlist for Torrevieja and stuff, you'll find most of the stuff already in there. Looked at Photocasa this is Kevin Herbert. I looked at Photocasa for buy to rent, only found one. Is it really an option? A lot of people aren't aware this exists. This is the point, because a lot of this stuff is based around what the banks want to sell. The banks aren't making a big profit on these. The banks don't even need to be too involved in rent to buys, because a lot of the time you've got people transferring their mortgages over. A lot of the time it's person to person, in the sense of there's nothing really the bank's getting involved with, because if you did transfer the mortgage, bear in mind they already put the mortgage on that property in the first place. I mean, this is a bit weird with some of this stuff relating to you must get it surveyed for the mortgage. Well, if the original mortgage was with the same bank, surely they'd already done that due diligence. All they're doing is charging you for something they'd already done, in my mindset anyway. But they're not selling a new property, and the bank's already getting the mortgage money anyway. So the profit value for banks, real estate agents, and others is very minimal, and that's why you're not seeing people really push it. It's something that needs to be developed as a fixed fee for, like, say, €250 for the marketing, the advertising, etc., and just put it out there, and then people sort it out between themselves. They get it notarized, get a contract set up, and do it officially. But at the same time, it doesn't really involve too much of the banks. A lot of these properties are already paid off, so there's no mortgages in the first place. It's a person-to-person thing. It's something that will develop, and it is becoming a bigger thing, because quite simply, they keep building new buildings, but older buildings can be harder to sell, especially when you've got to put like €30,000 up front before you can even move in. So the point being is it is a growing entity, but it is going to take time to get there. Hi, Matt. What is the market in Costa del Sol right now regarding jobs for native English speakers? The best jobs are online. The best jobs are going to be with companies that you can build a relationship, you can do remotely. A lot of the jobs around the coastal areas, they're wanting you to speak at least 2 languages, which are English and Spanish. But a lot of them are even wanting English, Spanish, Russian, English, Spanish, Dutch, Dutch, Belgian. because the market's changed over years. You know, it used to be, well, it's still pretty prominent with Brits, but the people buying houses are coming from Russia, Scandinavia, etc., etc. So they're gearing the market towards that because that's where the new money is coming from in many cases. Yeah, the reality of moving to Spain, the thing is, if you can sort work out, the rest will follow. Work is the hardest bit about moving to Spain. I'm just going through the questions quite quickly. You can make it here. There's plenty of people that have done it. There's plenty of people that have failed here. But at the same time, it's like anything. You've got to understand if you commit to it, you can find a way to make it happen. Where a lot of people fail is they don't learn Spanish. They don't really recognize that a lot of the skills they have, they can't really use here. You know, for example, you may be an accountant or whatever, but unless you can actually engage with a lot of British businesses or work with an accountancy firm that speaks English, you're going to have to learn Spanish, but also then start embedding into the way the Spanish taxes are done. But at the same time, you've got to adapt. And a lot of time people fail because they don't adapt, or they take on a business they've never done before, or quite simply, they're just ill prepared. One of the things I will say is you can do it in stages. You can come out here, start work, you know, could be working in a bar, could be doing something else that's normally out of your day-to-day life, but you'll learn Spanish quite easily because you're engaging with people on a daily basis. You'll find that you start to learn about the area from the people in the area who also know where there's other jobs and other things going on. A lot of the stuff that's here for the long term is word of mouth. So just bear that in mind. Glyn Roberts, win-win with rent to buy. Yeah, if you can get it at the right price and then rent it straight out, and you've got a good long-term tenant in there, they're paying your mortgage off. It is a win-win because your initial investment is buying the property, and then obviously a bit of refurbishment, maintenance costs over the years. But if the tenants are happy and stay there long term, you can't really lose on it unless you sell it, because there's taxes involved with selling. But that's another video for another day. If you pay your property off, don't you get hammered in tax like the UK? I don't think. I mean, in Spain, I'm not sure if you're on about if you went and paid lump sum. I mean, are you saying, do you get any, what do you call it? There's a word for it. If you paid it off, I don't think there's any incentive in the same way the UK system is. I think it's a different system. I mean, if you paid it off and then sold it or something, there is taxes around the sale or increased in value and stuff. What I recommend with properties here is you just buy them and just leave them to rent. You know, you're trying to recover as much through the rent as possible, but long term, even if you sold it, you know, for example, if you bought a property here and you paid it off quickly and you found after 10 years you wanted to sell it and there's some serious equity in the property, then you could sell it. And I think even though you paid the taxes, you'll come out on a positive amount anyway. But my view is to just buy properties and just keep them. I'm not looking at selling anything later on anyway. I think that's, yeah, the other one is unrelated, but any thoughts of the crypto tax changes next door in Portugal? The crypto taxes are an interesting one because the US market's been looking at the crypto taxes as well. And one of the problems you get with the crypto is it's only recognized when it's coming out of the system. So the point being is they only really know what you declare, because up until that point, there's nothing that's regulated. It's only when you start going to fiat or putting it fiat in and fiat out. But then if you mixed it around on the different exchanges and stuff, becomes very difficult to trace. So my personal view on the crypto taxes is it's up to you. You know, a lot of it is to try and force people to do things for the government's sake. It's a bit like here in Spain where they're telling everybody you must register, you must do this, you must do that, when the government hasn't been doing it for 20 years. But the Brexit's been an ideal opportunity to force people into the system. So some of that I would actually say, like a lot of it, is scaremongering to get people into the system, but also once you're in, you can't come out. But if you're never listed in the system, are they going to go looking for you? Who knows? Odds are on crypto, it could be a long time before they even get to that position. But like I said, it's when you start transferring into fiat. But things like a Wirex card and things like that, you can bypass a lot of this stuff anyway. Mal Bronson, good day, friend. Good day. Hope your day's going well. Stephen, looking well, Chief. Yeah, I've got to admit, I'm still up at 2:00 in the morning. It's too hot here at the minute, and then we still got the kids until Monday because the school holidays finish, so they'll be back at school on Monday. So I can actually start focusing on business and other things because it's been near impossible when the kids are home. Yeah, the other thing, I will start doing the live streams a bit more regular, but what I might do is actually just set it up so I let people know I'm going to do a live stream, say tomorrow. But week to week is near impossible because at the moment I'm setting things up business-wise and things, so I do move around a bit. Never 100% where I'm going to be every Friday or whatever. So at the moment, that's near impossible to do, but we'll see. Sun Yan Yip, good stuff, Matt. Yeah, appreciate the comment. Mal Bronson, the banks use agencies. The agents ask for 5% commission. I'd say the other thing on that is, I was talking to Mal the other day about this because I would say it's a minimum of 5%. Because the thing is, when you're trying to sell a property here, they're pretty much asking for 5,000 euros minimum. Yet, guess what? There's a lot of properties around the 60,000 mark, one bedroom places, etc. And they're still wanting 5,000 euros minimum. So, yeah, I'd say it's a minimum of 5% these guys are charging. Connor Van Grant, is it hard to get a mortgage as a foreigner? The market's geared for it because along the coast it's predominantly foreigners. What you just need to do is make sure all your paperwork's in order. For example, if you've got a regular income through a pension or you've got regular employment, they're still going to want the same sort of criteria that you do elsewhere. But I wouldn't say it's difficult. I'll just say it's same as everywhere else. Would you say retiring to Spain is still going to be viable? I would say Spain isn't going to change much. What the UK does, my personal view on the UK relating to the Brexit stuff is I think they're going to go to general election before any real changes happen. And then when it goes to general election, it'll drag out again. And then it could go any direction from there. But retiring to Spain, it'll always be an option. Spain actually wants people here. And the other thing is, the thing that people don't really talk about is market value. Because if people stopped retiring here, it would devalue the market. And as soon as the market devalues, it increases the interest. So the point being is, if suddenly the properties all dropped because it is, let's just say everybody had to have private medical insurance, suddenly there would be interest because the market's dropped to a value where people can afford medical insurance. So it would continue. The market would adjust to it. It's one of the problems you get with governments interfering in a lot of things which should be people's decisions, because they create inflation, because inflation devalues debt. And not for you and me, but for the governments, which is why they like inflation, although they like to control it to a certain level. But if you had a market that was basically dominated by people's needs and wants, it would be a very different picture, landscape overall for everything. A lot of this stuff is interference from larger companies, etc., adjusting the markets to suit themselves. Could you imagine just milk? If milk went down to the production costs, etc., would you find that the market would benefit from it? Would people benefit? Hang on a sec. Oh. Sorry, I had somebody driving past with music full blast. I can't have it on the live stream. Yeah, so the market value would adjust to what people's real needs are. And that's the funny thing with a lot of stuff today. There's a lot of control gone out there on things that would actually normally find their own levels. So I would say don't worry about the retirement side. I'll say the market will adjust to it. Spain has been very open and positive around the whole Brexit scenario. Although people keep pushing the Gibraltar stuff and all that sort of stuff, reality is Spain's got that as a separate issue. The rest of it relating to people moving here, retiring here, buying properties here, is a big part of Spain's economy. It doesn't want to damage that. So whatever happens in the UK, I see Spain being a lot more flexible. And I see some of the other countries could be either way, depending on what they're using British people for. You know, a lot of the time, but it's the other way as well. You know, you look at the number of staff in the NHS that are from Europe and other parts of the world. There's a reliance on it, which often gets completely ignored. Hang on a second. That's great. Yeah, somebody's making a lot of noise outside, so hopefully we don't pick any of that up. Stephen Birth, little man started big school a couple of days ago. He loves it, mate. Good thing is he'll be learning Spanish. He's doing really well as he's young and finds it exciting, so I'm happy with that. He'll pick it up really fast. I mean, my kid speaks Spanish like fluently. You know, my wife will ask my son what a specific thing is in Spanish because he already knows it because all his friends are Spanish. You know, kids pick it up extremely fast. And one of the things that you will find, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, as you get older, it's harder. I'd also say that when you're a kid and you're doing it in an environment where people are speaking the language, guess what? They're not sitting there going, oh, the grammar's incorrect or whatever. They're not overanalyzing it. They're focusing on the language, which is conversational. And then you start writing and then you get into the grammar. But generally, what you're actually saying and people are saying to you, in that way, you pick it up much faster because the conversational going backwards and forwards is quick to do, quick to learn because you're using it on a daily basis. You're absorbing it very fast because you're having to listen to people telling you something and you're replying to it. Where a lot of people get locked into the grammar box, where you get people, oh, I'm teaching Spanish and we're going to go over the verb to be, the Spanish word verb to be. We're going to go through it. I recommend avoiding all that and coming back to it. Because unless you're actually looking at a job where it's going to be an issue, you really need to get conversational and then expand from it. One of the things I do myself, because I'm not updated on Spanish lately, is I use Netflix a lot lately. And because the Netflix in Spain is a mix, the same with the Amazon, I've got a mix of Spanish and English shows. So some of the shows are completely in Spanish. You got the subtitles and language. Some of them are Spanish language and English subtitles. Some of them are English with Spanish subtitles. So what you do is you mix them around because then some of it you're picking up through the words, some of it you're picking up through your ears. And that works quite well. And you find that you start understanding more and more. The key to it is just keep at it. Even if you get bored of doing things like Duolingo or whatever, use the TV, use the newspapers, do stuff where it's keeping the gray matter alive. And you're going, what's that word again? And you start memorizing this stuff and you start noticing you can pick words out of sentences that, you know, people are talking and you start to understand what they're talking about. Don't overly focus on things like the grammar side because you'll get the grammar later. And a lot of people don't even get the grammar in the English and it's their first language anyway. When you start going to verb to be and past tense and future tense, and they go, what? So it's much better to just focus on the conversational and then working from that. Conor Van Grant, how much is it rent on average for a 2-bedroom? It depends where you are. I mean, here in La Mata, it's very hard to find 2 beds, but you're looking at a minimum of probably about 300 upwards. And I'd say in this area, Quesada, down to Lazinia, etc., you'll be around 300 upwards. You can find some a little bit cheaper as you go a bit further out, but they're normally older developments. But yeah, that'd be reasonable, about 300. Oh yeah, Stephen Birth, liking the t-shirt, mate. Good to see Torrevieja services picking up and time and efforts paying off. Yeah, it's a bit slow going, but I expected that. A lot of this is a case of building relationships with people, because obviously there's a lot of rogue traders out here. I was talking to Carlos last night about the electrics, because the problem is, even pretty much every property in this area that I've been, well, no, sorry, that's unfair. Every property I've been to in this area has been wired wrong. So the point being is, this is when people say, oh, well, it should be like this, it should be like, you know what, it should be. But this is a prime example when people say, well, the EU make the UK do this and you. You know what? Well, the opposite makes Spain do the wiring correctly, because they haven't done it. And that's the point. A lot of it is down to choice. And a lot of other countries do whatever they like. And Spain is one of them. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work. The electrics do work. It's when you have a problem, because they're not separate circuits and stuff. They're just not wired properly. But that's one of the things I would say. If you're buying a property, I'd put a budget for rewiring it, because a lot of the time the sockets and things haven't been changed, especially in this area. You're looking at properties from about 1979 onwards, and you can find that the plastic sockets and stuff are a bit brittle. You'll find that the wiring may be a little bit underrated, in the sense of, I normally put well, they'll put 1.5 where I'll normally put 2 or 2.5, because 1.5 normally put in lighting, but they'll use it for everything. And so the point being is, there is certain things that you may think, you know what, I'll rip it out while the place is empty, rewire it, it's done. You can separate all the circuits, so your cooker's on one, you've got separate aircon, you've got front of house, back of house, separate lights, separate sockets. And then if you get an electrical problem, it's only going to trip out the lights or the socket or the fridge or whatever, and not the entire house, which is one of the common problems that people come across here, because then you've got to work out what's actually causing the electric to go off, which, if it's all wired together, becomes a little bit more difficult. Any more questions? Because I'll cut that one off. This will actually be a short one today, only 33 minutes instead of 2 hours. But I'll probably do another one on Sunday as well. So, like I said, what I'll do, I'll see what I'm going to be doing the weekend, and then I'll flag that up. But I think I'm going to have to head off to the dentist in a minute and go and pick up April and the kids. So it's been nice chatting. Hope you all guys have a great day and have a great weekend if I don't hear from you before. Take it easy. Stern Wanderer, just before we go. The logo looks like the Pip-Boy from Fallout games. Is trademark copyright law a problem for small businesses in Spain? Not that you run into problems. I haven't heard of it, but there has been some funny ones. There was a bar chain. I'm trying to think. I think it's called La Mafia or something. Mafia restaurant chain. Yeah. So I'll send this to you. This is a food chain in Spain. It's called if you just Google La Mafia restaurants, they got banned because of it, the Italians complained. But generally, you don't really see too many problems here. I mean, let's face it, IPTV. you'll see on billboards people advertising the fact you can get all your UK TV and stuff here, which obviously would be in breach of BBC, for example, which is why they work hard to try and block it. But if people are willing to stick it on the billboard, that tells you how bothered they are in Spain about being caught for doing it. Stephen Burst, sun's come out now, so going to try and get maybe to get maybe an hour in. Yeah, an hour is working. Adios, mate. Adios. So I'll say good afternoon to everybody. Take it easy and speak soon.